Are you there, Father?
I'm here.
Can you hear
Is it
me?
just I can hear you, I can see
Okay.
you.
Okay. You're
It's just
it's recording, so don't say anything you're gonna regret.
okay. So I shouldn't say anything about some of the things you did in your previous past life.
No.
Okay.
No. Welcome back, Father. So you are part of the select few who's gotten a second episode on the podcast, and you were very specific about the topic. So obviously you are not a football coach. So I think last time you were on, which was, gosh, was that spring of or fall of 2020, maybe, or spring
I
of.
have no recollection of ever doing this
Oh,
before.
thanks. Great. You're like the 10th, you're like the 10th episode. I appreciate you not remembering. Um, it was the heart of or the heat of the pandemic. So, but I believe when we talked last time, the conversation was more about what it was like being a parent of a coach. So, um,
Okay.
you have requested that we speak about your one of your passions, which is literature, which you've passed on to, I think, two of your three children. I don't know if the third child is much of a reader, but
Well, I passed it on to two of the three children and uh, partially to the grandchildren as well, although I don't know if reading the same book repeatedly counts the same as moving along to other books, but
it
at
can.
least everybody reads Harry Potter.
Well, we actually just got back from the library. We checked out 26 more books for your newest granddaughter to read. So that's fun.
Well,
But
okay, that's good.
yes.
Okay, so
Yes, you have a list. You have your.
I have more than a list. I have a little. Th This discussion is really a little bit beyond just literature
Okay.
for football. I've go excuse me. I've gone and at least almost every book that I'm going to mention
Yeah.
is a book that I've read because along the way there was something in it that interested me, and I wanted to see what it had to say about football.
Okay.
Uh, I'm also probably, I will confess, when I started doing this a couple days ago, and I started checking out books to mention, I came across other books that I thought that I might want to mention.
Yeah.
So the list that originally was nine is at least up to 11 now,
Okay.
although I didn't send you pictures. I'll mention those. And also, I'm not sure how or when the people who will view this podcast will have an opportunity. But if they can contact you, or if they want to contact me, maybe at some point you'll put my email address up. Uh,
Well,
I'd love to hear from them.
I will put I will make a comment that if they have questions to send me a message, and then
Good.
in a private message I can share with them your email address.
Okay, that'll
I
be
don't know
fun.
I don't know if you want me to put your email address on Twitter. Um,
Oh, no,
yeah.
no.
So I can do
Yeah.
that. I will make a when I post it I will let them know if they have questions, excuse me, or are interested in the full list. They can reach out to you. Yeah.
Okay. The list
Okay.
always grows.
So
But
is this a 1 through 10 or is this just a random, there's
no,
no specific
no.
order? Okay.
Okay. There is some specific order because basically what I did when I prepared this list was I broke it into three categories, which I'll mention in just a second.
Okay.
But the first thing I wanted to say, and I don't say this because you're my son and a football coach. It's been my experience, no, and I mean this very seriously. It's been my experience that football coaches are a little bit better readers or more engaged readers than other coaches and other sports people. And I think in part it's because the mind of a football coach is a little bit more analytical and uh, has to retain a little bit more information. Uh, I could be a baseball manager or a baseball coach without any problem. I could
Hmm.
I could run a baseball team. I've seen enough baseball games. I know enough about baseball. I could do that. But I could never be a football coach because you have to have a lot more information. Now, sure, I mean a lot of it is stuff that you carry with you. You have your play cards and other things, and you have other people sometimes who are sitting up in a press box with notebooks and information. Uh, but you still have that you have to retain that kind of
Hmm.
information. And the mind of a football coach is just different. I think it really struck me a couple of years ago when I was at one of your practices at Lake Forest. It was the first time I'd ever been at a college football practice, and I had never seen anything so specifically organized.
Yeah.
There's a clock. The clock is running. The horn sounds. The players move to the next thing that they're doing in that practice. It's a much more organized process, and I
That's
think so that's something that might encourage people to do some reading.
That's also
So
that I will say too. I'll give a shout out. That's also very much Coach Cat. Coach Jim Catanzaro, who's the head coach of Lake Forest, is very organized, very structured in how he wants things done. So, and that was probably, I'm sure, for him too, a learned trait. That
oh,
wasn't he just
oh,
didn't come about.
yeah,
So,
and I appreciate that fact, but I can tell you at least that I think he's not the only one.
no, no,
Even if you watch, for example, and maybe it's not quite the same, but this past week there was a lot of super Senior Bowl practices and things going on, and they kind of do it the same way. There just seems to be more structure.
there a lot of that too is not to get off subject, is NCAA regulated. You're only allowed X number of minutes on the field, so you've got to take advantage of every minute you can. But anyways, I digress.
Okay, all right, but well, so let's move along here.
Okay.
And I will tell you that I divided these books into three categories each of three, and maybe a couple more will sneak in. And the categories are really this. The first category are books about specifically coaching.
Okay. So okay. Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about those first. The second category are what I've called books about seasons. And when we get there, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's always hard to come up with to label a subject, but you'll know what I'm talking about when we
Yeah.
get there. And the last topic is the one that I think is probably the one that most coaches and maybe don't really spend that much time. And there are reasons for it, but that's fictional books about football.
Sure.
There aren't that many, but we'll get to that. So the first topic, the first area that I would like to discuss, at least for a brief period of time, are books about coaching by
Okay.
coaches
By
for
coaches.
coaches.
Sure.
Yes. Okay. And the first one, this probably isn't the best way to start, but the first one is a book that if people are going to listen to this and they're going to want to write down titles of books to look for and books to go and see about buying, this is a book it's going to be very hard to find. And the title of the book is Finding the Winning Edge, and it's by Bill Walsh.
That is the holy grail of coaching books.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to
Yeah.
hear you say that. But it's also the book that's a little bit difficult to find, and I'll explain why in just a second. But Bill Walsh, of course, is a legendary coach.
Hmm.
I don't know. That if they had a Mount Rushmore for football coaches, maybe he'd be on there.
He's on it.
But
He's definitely on
okay,
it. The advances he made to the game. He's on the Mount Rushmore.
okay, very good. Well, he was a Super Bowl winner. He was a successful college coach, but also for all of the coaches out there who know anything about his life, he was a coach who took a long time to finally get a head coaching job in professional football. He didn't struggle. I mean, everybody liked him, but it was always, well, he hasn't coached before. You've all heard that, Well, he's never been a head coach.
Right.
So he finally became a head coach, and he was very successful, as I say, Super Bowls. He went back after he retired from the NFL and coached, I think, at Stanford for a while.
Stanford. Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, when he finally retired, he decided to write this book, Finding the Winning Edge. There are a couple of other, I should mention, there are a couple of other Bill Walsh books out there. If you can't find this one, some of the material is probably available in the other books. And if just, all you have to do is go online, go on Amazon, Bill Walsh. Go to a place I love to frequent. Go to a used bookstore, and they always have big sections on sports. Bill Walsh. You can
the only problem with the Bill Walsh book is I don't think you can find it for under $300 now.
This one, Finding the Winning Edge.
Right,
but
correct.
He's got a couple other books.
Yeah.
But Finding the Winning Edge, as I say, after he retired, he started working on this book with Brian Billick and a writer named James Peterson. They wrote this book. It was very popular, as Tony notes. It's a book that probably, if you go into any professional football office, you'll find it someplace there, probably in a lot of college offices as well. It's got diagrams. It's got everything. It's an all-encompassing book. But here's the ironic thing. The first print was, several thousand, maybe 20,000 copies, maybe even not that many. And Walsh didn't like it.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I didn't either until I started doing my homework for this, for here. And Walsh didn't like that book. And so but he never got around to doing a second edition, and a subsequent edition. And then, unfortunately, he passed away. The family owns the rights to the book, but they've not republished it or taken any action. And I don't know.
Which is surprising. In the
publishing business?
Yeah,
Maybe
it's surprising because it is such a and maybe they want to keep it that way. They want to keep some of Bill's legacy alive and not push, because it would be the most sold copy book, sports book in the history if they republished it.
I'm not sure that we're going to mention a couple others that maybe, but there are different kinds of books.
Right.
This is a book. This is it's just a different kind of book. It's a book, I mean, most people are not. The only reason I even know about this book is because I have you, who is a good reader and who likes books and has a lot of books, a good collection. And I knew this would be one that you'd appreciate.
Well, I think I told you this. I'm sure you've forgotten because your memory isn't quite what it used to be. I at one point owned 2 copies of this book. And me being a very, very good person, gave a copy away to my former office mate at Lake Forest, who hopefully, if Sam Mulford is listening to this, has still kept it and has used it. But yeah, so I used to own 2 copies of it, and gave one away. So I'm sure there's plenty of people out there scratching their head at why I would give one away, but I'm far too nice of a person, I guess.
Okay, well, that's all right. There's nothing wrong with giving the book. And as a matter of fact, you did receive it in one of our annual holiday book exchanges.
Yeah. Well, I that was the second copy. The first copy you had found, I think, at listeners, my father used to be very active with the local library in Springfield, Illinois, and I believe the first copy you found at the library sale.
Let's just put it like this. If I found it at the library sale, it was when I was sorting books. And if
That's what I mean.
Found it while I was sorting books, it never made it to the library.
Well,
sale.
you know what? Yes, it was one of the ones in the when you used to bring home boxes of books from you finding them. But I'm more than 50% certain that's where the first copy came from. Was
well,
that.
It could be. It could be. And I've been able to. You can. If you're a true bookophile, bibliophile, whatever you want to be, a file.
Oh, easy.
And you know where to look for books. You know where
Yeah,
to look. You can sometimes
you
find it
can
that
you could
find it
find it.
here.
Yeah, it would take some doing, but you could probably find it. But again, you're dropping a couple $100.
Yes, yes. Okay. The second book in this category. Now, the next two books that we're going to talk about are books very specific for offensive line people.
Which I
Uh,
am.
and okay, good. And so the first one I want to mention is a book called The Assembly Line,
Yep.
and it's written by a former coach at Nebraska, Milt Tenopir, and Tenopir. By the way, I'm
The
not sure. I'm not sure when Tony will post them or how he'll post them, but I have copies of all the covers for
yeah.
everybody to look at. So
I'll try to do it when I post it tomorrow. So the assembly line is the holy grail for offensive line coaches. It is one of those, again, very much like the Bill Walsh book. It is very revered. It is very important to those who have it. Again, I own a copy of it, but only the one copy of it, and I'm not giving that one away. But it is because this was Nebraska, right? This was written by
yes,
the Nebraska offensive line coach when they were Nebraska, when they were winning national titles, and when were rolling people. So it's a pretty neat book.
it is, and it's here. This is a kind of an interesting observation, as you've just said. There was a time when Nebraska was a powerhouse, and uh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure the age of your listeners, but we sometimes. I know that many of them are far younger than I am. Some of them are younger than you are, and they may not realize or they may not recall that there was a time in probably the end of the 20th century. The 1990s,
Yeah,
early into what I guess people call the noughts, the early part of the 2000s, when Nebraska was a powerhouse.
yeah.
Used to be, some of you will recall that on Thanksgiving weekend, the Nebraska-Oklahoma game was the huge rivalry game in college football. And there were a couple of years when they played each other when they were 1 and 2 in the country.
Yeah.
This was before playoffs, and this was before some of the things that we have now. And they
Yeah.
were very big powerhouses. And Nebraska, even when Nebraska came into the Big Ten, there were Big Ten fans who thought that they would just start rolling over the teams in the Big Ten and dominate. And we all know
Well,
that didn't happen.
no, but they were successful. They've had there's a
Yeah,
lot of I mean, obviously with Tom Osborne they were a different Nebraska team, but they had some good success with Frank Solich, and then with oh shoot, now I'm drawing a blank on his name. Gosh,
and
it's
I'm the
terrible.
one who doesn't have a good memory. I can't think
Well,
of.
yeah, I've got far much worse CTE than you do.
Okay, all
But
right.
yeah, so they had some success. But yes, anyways.
But anyway, one of the things I wanted to do was just to give you a flavor for this book, go through some of the chapter headings that really tell you quite a bit. Run blocking, progression, and rule blocking, the inside zone scheme and plays,
Hmm.
option football, the trap game, the counter game, the isolation and delayed draw series. So there's some of the things in there. And in fact, actually, it goes all the way down to off-season workouts and nutrition.
Hmm.
Now, that book was written quite a long time ago, but
Uh,
it's
early 90s or late 80s.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, well, he had been coaching for a long time. And
right.
it's interesting that even back then, there was some discussion about nutrition in workouts and weight and things of that nature. But all of us, or not all of us, but many of us can remember that there was a time in college football and professional football when uh, every year in the NFL draft, there was a Nebraska lineman
Oh
who
yeah.
went in the first round. They had a fantastic line play and fantastic linemen.
Yes.
So,
Well, they were also and there were every year um there was they had All-Americans among the offensive line, one, two, three, however many. So they were not to make a
Mhm.
pun about the name of the book, but they were truly a factory. They were churning guys out.
Yes. Okay. The third book in this list, you'll be happy to hear. You can probably find any place. You can find it. You may even be able to find it at Barnes and Noble. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it online. And it's a book that I have read and I very much enjoyed. And I think one of the reasons why I enjoy it is because this is what sets this book apart. Now, I've never been to a weekend of a conference for coaches.
Hmm.
So I don't know what goes on at those conferences,
It's
but
not
I
far
can
off from it's not far off from one of your judges' conferences. It's
well, and
the
okay.
root of it is still the same.
Except here's the thing about those conferences. All of us can agree, be it for judges, lawyers, coaches, you go to the conference and they always have a big long list of programs and presentations that
Hmm.
they're going to put on. And you go to those and you enjoy them, and you learn, sometimes you learn a lot. But the other thing that you do to those at those conferences is, after the conference is over and after the day's activities are over, now you go someplace and you sit down and you
Hmm.
have a dinner or you have some drinks, or you just get together with some of your coaching friends and with some other new acquaintances. And you learn as much there as you do at the individual sessions that you attend, because
Yeah.
people share thoughts, people share ideas, people share experiences.
Hmm.
So this third book, this last book in this group, is called The View from the O-Line, and the author is Howard Mudd, who
Hmm.
unfortunately, in doing my homework, I learned passed away a few years ago
Yeah.
uh, uh, as a result of a motorcycle accident.
Yeah.
He was an he was a very good he was a offensive lineman in the NFL for many years, and then he became a coach. He was a coach for the Indianapolis Colts, and one year he was coach. He was the coach the year that they won the Super Bowl. He was
Yep.
the offensive line coach, and what he's done is he just sat down with the retired offensive lineman from the NFL. They talked,
Hmm.
and he shares this in chapters. Some of the names you probably remember: Jeff Saturday, who still is on doing commenting on television;
Yep.
Frank Winters, Jackie Slater. I remember Jackie Slater; Nick Mangold, and there's others on there. It's very interesting. It's just a
Yeah.
wonderful. It's a very good book that explains, you know, uh, what what it entails. Now, you just posted it recently in I guess on Instagram or someplace, one of these technologies that's beyond me. This wonderful comment that a coach made that I thought was really quite interesting. The coach who said, the one thing about playing the offensive line is it's the only sport where you can play, and the only position you can play where all the activity that's important to the game happens behind
Oh
you.
yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's very true, when it comes to
Yeah. Well,
like,
it's also one of the few sports where you're asked to retreat. You're asked to, where everything is go to the ball, you're asked to retreat. Pass protection is you're backing away from the defender. So you're asked to retreat from the action sometimes. So it's yeah,
yes,
it's a very I mean, offensive line is obviously it's very near and dear to my heart, and we are as offensive linemen and offensive line coaches, we're usually pretty cerebral people. We think with our brains. It's you're gonna get a
yes,
lot of good sound bites, and you're gonna get a lot of good quotes talking to offensive line guys, which is what I'm sure Mudd his plan was in writing this book.
yes, yes. Okay, so that's three books about coaching.
Okay.
Uh, Now I didn't come up with any others in that, but oh wait, there's it's not really about coaching specific,
Yeah.
but one of the books that I came across as I was doing this was oh gosh, I wrote it here someplace, I hope. Uh, Maybe not. I'll have to
Well,
come up with it.
I
I'll come up
I
with it
will
later.
I will add two books to that list that you mentioned.
Okay.
The Bill Belichick book, which he's writing another one apparently, but there's a really good Bill Belichick book, and then one of my all-time favorites, Swing Your Sword by Mike Leach.
Oh
Those are
yeah. Well,
those are they are not, obviously the Mike Leach book is one of a kind, and it's more about not about football than it is about football, but those are two that I really appreciate for the
well, I'll
listeners.
I'll add one. I'll add one more to that, and it's the book that I was looking for, and I can't think of the title now. The author's name is S.W. Gwynn, and it's a because it includes a big section on Mike Leach
Oh,
and
is it the
the
forward pass?
the forward pass,
Yeah.
yes, and it's about basically the development and the creation of senior moment here. The offense that
Oh,
was
the air
developed.
raid. The air
Air
raid.
Raid. Thank
Yes.
you. Yes, Air Raid.
Yes.
And that book goes with Swing Your Sword. Mike Leach's book is a pretty good one, and I like, but Mike Leach. Oh, hello, Miss Frankie.
Hold on, Frankie. All right, now now Grandpa can hear you. Say hi.
Hi, Frankie.
Say hi, how you doing, Papa?
Okay.
All right, we got to talk. Papa and I are talking. I'll be out there in a little bit.
Okay. So let's move on to the next section. The middle section are the books that I called the season books,
Okay.
and because they're books that involve authors who basically implanted themselves in places and participated in an entire season
Sure.
with a football program. And the first one is really, one of the greatest books ever just written, period. This is a book that people probably see it and say, well, I don't want to read that. It's a football book. But it isn't.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful book about life, and it's Friday Night Lights.
Yeah. Friday Night Lights. I think all three of these books in this category are ones that I've read multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Friday Night Lights, I want to say, is the book that really got me into reading, because I always liked to read and I always enjoyed reading, but I think you got me a copy of Friday Night Lights when I was a freshman in high school, which would have been
That would
1995. And
probably.
I've read it at least once a year since then. So what's that? 30 years ago almost?
Yes,
So,
and okay, it's a phenomenal book. It's for those who don't may not know. It's he went down to Odessa, Texas,
mhm.
and he basically stayed with a high school football coach and program down there called Odessa Permian High School.
Yeah.
And they had won a state championship, and they were always in. They were in the championships, and the book, I think, is just a wonderful study of. It was a very diverse group of kids, a very diverse group of coaches, and of course, anybody who knows anything about football knows that there's football, and then there's Texas
Oh
football,
yeah.
and there's Texas high school football. And I don't think I have ever met a coach who doesn't, at least at some point in his life, really, I don't want to say dream, but contemplate that, God, it would be great to be a coach in Texas, a Texas high school coach, football coach,
Well,
until, of course,
you're
they run you out of town because you lose, three
that's you
games.
have to win. I mean,
Yes.
that's the other side of it. Is it's very. Now there are obviously there's places in Texas that are not quite to that level. There's places where teachers have to teach and do all those things, and
Mhm.
if they go 4-7, they're not going to be fighting for their lives. But on the flip side, there are those places where guys make well into the six figures and they don't have to teach a class, but they better win Friday nights or they're out of there.
And and remember, there are high school football stadiums in the state of Texas that seat 25 and 30,000 people.
Oh yeah.
And this is a kind of away from it's related to football, but years ago, I had a friend here in Springfield who uh, he played in the marching band at University of Illinois, and he was a music teacher. And his first job was teaching music at a Texas high school that had a marching band in at the high school that had 400 students marching in the band.
Oh yeah.
So, that's just tells you what's going on. I mean,
There's well, it's there's getting to be a lot of those again. I mean, they haven't really left, but there's more and more. I mean, Texas is I talked to friends of mine who coach down there, and they work in districts that they're opening new school after new school after new school
mhm.
just because it's people are moving there, and population is growing so much. So
Yes.
it's not going anywhere.
And every year at the end of the year in November, you can always watch the Texas, at least around here, you can watch the
December.
Texas high school football playoffs, and they get to
Not
the semi
November,
the
December.
December. Yeah, they play
It's
all the way.
Christmas time.
And, yeah, and they play the final games in the big college stadiums, actually indoors now because it is December. But they
No,
draw big crowds.
they play their championship games at Jerry World. They played in
Yes,
Dallas. Yeah.
yes, yes. I think they alternate between Jerry World or some they play in Houston. I'm not sure exactly
Maybe,
how
I
they
don't
do
know.
it.
Yeah.
But anyway, but of course, the thing about Friday Night Lights is it became a cottage industry because after the movie, uh, they did eventually make a TV series out of
Yeah.
Friday Night Lights that some people like, some people don't like. Last year or the year before, when I was at the book festival in Tucson, uh, Buzz Bissinger was there because he was talking about another book that he'd written.
Yeah.
And I asked him about Friday Night Lights, and one of the things he told me was that he'd actually had to go to court because there was some dispute about the use of the term Friday Night Lights.
Yeah.
He claimed a proprietary interest in it or something, and I went to court and they settled it. But okay, for everybody who's listening, here's the trivia question. If you send it to Tony, he'll
What are
give you a
they gonna win
shout
a
out. Here's
prize?
the trivia question. What? Yeah, you can win a
I said they're
prize.
gonna win a prize.
Who's
Yeah.
the only person? Who's the only person who was in the movie Friday Night Lights and the television series Friday Night Lights? Don't go to Google. If you know it, you can send it to Tony. I will tell you this
Hold
though.
on, hold on,
What?
hold on, hold on, hold on. There's
Okay,
two people. There's two people.
I
There's
only
two
know
people.
one.
Well, there's two because I was just listening
Okay,
to a
well you'll have to
podcast
tell
about
me
Friday
after the
Night Lights.
show.
I'll tell you after, but there's
Okay.
two.
All right, I'll wait to
So,
hear that then.
yes.
Okay, I only know one. But anyway, I also want to point out for those of you who have watched the movie, and this is not a spoiler, I will just tell you that you won't be surprised to hear that like most movies that are based on actual events and everything, they do take some liberties. Uh, the end of the movie, Friday Night Lights,
Right.
is not in any way like the real game and the real season for Odessa Permian.
No.
So it's not nearly as suspenseful. Well, maybe it's suspenseful, but
It's still the book still keeps you on your toes. It's a
yes,
very good
yes,
read.
yes.
I actually when when I was working at Elmhurst and driving an hour and a half to and from every day, I listened to it on book or on audio.
Okay, yeah.
And so
I
it
think it
was
would be a good.
yeah.
It would be the kind of book that would be good to listen to because
Yes.
it's not you don't have to worry about character. I mean you worry about characters, but you don't have to worry about plot and oh did I
No,
miss
no, you don't
something?
have there's
Yeah,
not a lot of yeah, you don't have to keep it's not like reading
yeah.
Game of Thrones where there's 800 different characters.
I think
So,
maybe I'll listen to it again on my when I go. I'm on the treadmill, but I listen to other things. I listen to podcasts and things of that
yeah,
nature.
it's a good one.
Second book that in this genre. Ooh, okay. The Sweet Season by Austin Murphy.
Hmm.
Now, Austin Murphy was a sports writer, and I think still is. well, like actually can't be for Sports Illustrated. They're no longer in existence. But he was a sports writer. He worked for Sports Illustrated for many years.
Yeah.
And after several years, he decided that he would undertake a project. And his project was he was going to go to St. John's in Minnesota and spend a season with the St. John's Johnnies
Yep.
in its Coffeyville, is that right, Tony? Coffeyville, Minnesota, is that
No,
what the town?
Collegeville.
Collegeville, Minnesota.
Collegeville.
Yeah, Collegeville. And he was going to spend time with that team, who at that time was a Division III powerhouse.
They still are. They still are.
They still are, yes. But at that time, they were coached by John Gagliardi, who is actually, I believe, still the winningest college football coach in history.
Yes.
And
a legend.
The reason I read this book,
he's a legend.
Legend. Yes. Oh yeah, legend. Okay. The reason I read this book is because when it came out in 2001, and it coincided with Tony's Division III football career. Before Tony went off to play football in Division III, I had no idea what Division III football was about. I had, to me, it was, I didn't even know what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And so he started his career at Augustana, who had been a Division III powerhouse for a few years. They'd won a few championships. Then he moved to Illinois College, and I started going to games, and I started meeting people, and I started following it. And I discovered, I'll give a plug to these guys that they don't need my plugs anymore, but I'll give a plug to the D3 football page. I'm sure everybody,
they'll appreciate it. Yeah.
I love that. One year, I almost won the pool, the
bracket.
Yeah. I think I came in second. But anyway, I love D3 football. I still follow D3 football. I followed it for many years now, and this book captured it perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And this book captured the whole thing. And Gagliardi was he was a unique coach ahead of his time. Coaches who are ahead of their time oftentimes don't get appreciated until they're done. But he did quite a few things. He didn't have physical practices. By that, I mean, there wasn't a lot of blocking and tackling and punishment. He didn't have a playbook. His plays were on note cards. He had D3 schools have very large rosters, and but he had a lot of kids from Minnesota who he dealt with. He coached there for many years, and then his son was a high school football coach in Minnesota, and I think he came to the university. Did he?
Son, I think is currently the offensive coordinator there. I can't recall though.
Yeah.
But son was. I mean the coaches. Life comes full circle. So in 2021 at Lake Forest, we were able to go to St. John's and play a game there.
Yes.
And it was, for me, it was very cool because I saw all the things that I read about, and there's some names of people that I remembered, and I got to nerd out a little bit and talk to one of the assistant coaches there who I remember reading about in the book, and I told him that. But there's people that have been there besides Gagliardi who's since passed. There's people that have been involved with that program for 40 years. I think the head coach, coach there now, Gary Fashing, I think he's been there since the 80s, since the mid 80s as all different roles. So but they treat people well. You get Johnny bread, which was awesome. And it's and they do things the right way. So why would anybody want to leave?
And I will confess that when Lake Forest made it into the playoffs that year, and then they drew St. John's, I really wanted to go up to the game because it was one of the things on my bucket list.
Yeah.
But from where I live now, it was like a 7 or 8 hour trek, and maybe even more than that.
If you recall, with your terrible memory, you had just had your second hip replacement surgery.
Oh yeah,
too.
Thank you.
So you weren't gonna sit in a car for 8 hours, Father.
That's right. Okay,
God.
You see that? Listen, okay, all you guys there, who are out there listening, it's always good to have your child remind you of all the things that the events in your life. But also another, I have one. This is not a trivia question. This
Okay.
is a trivia fact that I discovered over the years. One of the professors, this is for you, anybody out there who's my age. There's maybe one coach who's still around my age.
There's a
But
few.
one of the professors at St. John's College at one time in his life was a fellow named Eugene McCarthy, and who ran for president, and who was the guy who knocked. If you know your history, he's the guy who knocked Lyndon Johnson out of the Democratic primary in 1968. Over the Vietnam War.
Only you
So
know these things.
yeah, that's right. Well, it's that's why I don't know my children's birthdays,
Yeah,
because
no
I have
kidding.
facts like that stuck in my head and my brain
Exactly.
that I can't knock out.
Exactly.
All right, third book in this
Yes.
group, third and final book. It's called The Ancient Eight. For sure, you can get this one because you can get Sweet Season. You can get all kinds of copies of Friday Night
Yeah.
Lights, and you can get this one because it just came out last year. And the author is one of the great sports writers, 2 words, not 1 word, sports authors in American history, John Feinstein, who has written now 50 books. This book that came out last year was his 50th book. And The Ancient Eight is about Ivy League football.
I think you just gave me a copy.
Yeah, I did, yes. As a matter of fact, I'll give myself a plug here. Amongst the things that I do, I write book reviews for a website called bookreporter.com. And I get to do a lot of the sports books because not many people like to read sports books.
Yeah.
And I've done several John Feinstein books, and I did this one because it was right in my wheelhouse. It was a sports book, and of course, it's about football. It's about the Ivy League. And the Ivy League is, of course, a very interesting league because up until this past, well, actually, next season, for the first time, the Ivy League is going to participate in the college football playoffs.
Yeah.
They're going to be in division, I guess, 1A.
They're FCS. So there's FCS.
Thank you. And because prior to this, the Ivy League teams played a season where they would have a full round robin, so they'd play 7 games against their other schools, and then they'd play 2 non-conference games. So they only had a 9-game schedule. They played nothing else. They didn't have any additional games. Some college football teams, Division I teams now are playing 16. They're playing as many games as the NFL, 16 games.
If they get that far, right? Correct.
Yeah. So anyway, but now they're going into FCS, and so up until this past year, when the season was over, that was it. And so in the conference, the Ivy League championship was often, there would be ties. One year there was a 3-way tie, and they would never break the tie. They had a tie-breaking formula. Actually, they didn't. They gave everybody a trophy who tied. And there were all kinds of games. In fact, here's another great football book that just popped into my head that some of you might think about. It's called Harvard Beats Yale 29-29.
Yep.
A long time ago, there was a classic football game between Harvard and Yale, the last game of the season, that Yale was undefeated going into the game. Harvard had lost a couple of games. Yale was ahead by 15 points with like 2 minutes to go, and Harvard somehow came back and tied the game and destroyed their undefeated season. And very good book. If you can find it, probably still around.
Yeah.
But the Ivy League is a very interesting phenomenon because, first of all, education still is very important.
Yep.
Now, interestingly, Feinstein makes, I think, a very telling point here about how coaches, scouts, NFL scouts, still actively go to Ivy League games because, especially for offensive linemen, they like to get offensive linemen from the Ivy League because they're smart
Yeah,
and they know they follow, they take instruction well, and they follow they know how to play the game. And in
yeah.
fact, my my beloved Chicago Bears, I think, drafted a guy from Harvard last year, and he is on the
He's
practice.
from
He may have
Chicago.
played. Yeah, he
He
might have.
started.
What did he sign as a free agent,
No, they drafted him. He was
or was he
drafted in the third or
drafted?
fourth round. He famously started, I think, against Seattle and did terrible. But he's
Oh,
a
you shouldn't say that. You
well,
spoiled the.
he's a local Chicago kid. So people. I mean,
Okay,
obviously he still made the NFL, but yeah. So he took some grief for that. But
but this is a very interesting book that I think people will enjoy because there is also a lot of material in the book about the various coaches and the coaching philosophies.
yeah,
It is a different area because uh, for coaches as well, because players have academics still come first, and but
well,
the Ivy League is producing a lot of good players. In fact, some of the players have transferred, given the transfer portal
yeah.
now. Some of them are playing in big, good Division I schools.
Well, what most people know, coaches know, but most people outside of the coaching world don't know is that the Ivy League is non-scholarship. So they are not awarded athletic scholarships. Now, if you're going to Harvard or Yale, chances are you're an elite academic brain, so you're getting academic scholarships. But most of those, not most of those, all of those players, none of those players are getting athletic scholarships. They're going there
Right.
because they want to go there. There's a young man actually.
Although they get some financial aid, but
Well, they get
not all
academic
of them.
scholarships and things like
Yeah.
that, but they don't get any
Hmm.
of the athletic scholarships that the other FCS schools get.
Correct. Okay.
All right, another
Third section.
I got another one for that list, another Feinstein book, the Army Navy book.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah.
another great
Actually,
book where
I have that here.
yeah, where he
And
goes he follows them for that season. So,
he also wrote a book. If you want to go up into the NFL level, I think he wrote a book about the Ravens. I think it's called Next Man Up or something
oh
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah. Well, Feinstein, if no matter what sport you like, you can always, if
Yeah.
you just get Feinstein because
Feinstein wrote a book about it.
yeah, he's great on basketball. He's great on baseball. He wrote a wonderful book. God, I can't think of the name of the title of it now, but it was about I think it's about the Olympics. But
Yes.
great author, great author. Okay, fiction. Now, before I get into my fiction books, uh, I do have to say that when it comes to sports fiction, the best place to read the fiction is the best subject, baseball books.
Okay.
Baseball is much better than football. And I think part of it is because in a baseball game, you can kind of, you know, get the aura, you can get the magic, you can get maybe a little bit of the history and things. Football, describing football games is a lot more difficult. I mean, okay, Friday Night Lights is a great description of football games, but it's fact.
Right.
Week season is fact. It's a little bit more difficult, I think, to do football games in the fictional sense. And in fact, the first book that I'm going to mention in my list is North Dallas 40 by Pete Gent. That's a
Mm-hmm.
very old book. It came out in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of these books back in the 60s, before most of you were born. There were a lot of sports tell-all books. There was a baseball book called Ball Four that, kind of exposed a lot of things that were going on in baseball. And North Dallas 40 was a book that did that for football.
Oh, hold on. I just thought of another for going back a topic. You made me think of another great spending a quote unquote season with football. Paper Lion.
Okay, Paper Lion. you're stealing my thunder a little
Okay,
bit
I'm
here.
sorry.
Okay, no. I was gonna mention Paper Lion in this section
Okay.
because Paper Lion, well, we'll talk about it right now. The Paper Lion is, of course, a sports classic, George
Yes.
Plimpton. He doesn't spend a season with the Detroit Lions. He
He spends
spends the
a
preseason.
preseason. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, and he gets to the first game and they let him in for a couple of snaps, whatever. Now, what makes Paper Lion very important is of course, the fact that, well, two things. It was a great book about sports, and Plimpton was one of these guys who liked to kind of inject himself into the, into the
Yes.
whole thing. He came there as an he didn't. Nobody knew he was not a football player. He just came in so he could, see what the players did. But they made a fantastic movie out of it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the movie did was a lot of the Lions players were in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was Alex Karras, who
Mm-hmm.
then went on
Mongo.
to have an actual movie and
Yeah.
acting career.
Mongo.
So, yeah. So anyway,
Anyway, sorry.
okay,
I know
that's
it's easy to
okay.
get you sidetracked.
Listen, it's your show.
I know.
All right.
But
So Pete Gent, North
yes.
Dallas 40. North Dallas 40, when it came out in the 60s, was very controversial because it said terrible things about the NFL. It said that that they forced players to play when they were injured.
Mm-hmm.
They gave them drugs to mask their injuries. The players took other drugs. The players were they chased women. They did all the things that you weren't supposed to do. The coaches were vindictive, and everybody went crazy and said, "My God, why is he writing all this terrible stuff about the NFL?" Well, it turned out that most of it was true.
Right.
But Pete Gent by himself was a very interesting character because Pete Gent never played college football, was a basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
Now, back in the 60s, when the Cowboys were first starting out, and the NFL was a little bit different. Most people may not recall this. But back in those years, the NFL draft, first of all, there were only 12 teams in the NFL at this stage, and then they expanded and expanded and expanded. But the NFL draft was 22 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
And Pete Gent was drafted by the Cowboys because they were very much impressed with his athleticism. The Cowboys used to draft people who didn't play football because they thought they might be good players.
Yeah.
In fact, though here in Illinois, the Cowboys drafted a player from the University of Illinois named Preston Pearson, who never played football in college. He was a basketball player at U of I. He went on and had a career with the Cowboys, I think, as a wide receiver.
Probably, yeah.
Pete Gent was a wide receiver as well.
Yep.
He wrote this book. They made it into a movie. Had a very good movie, a very popular movie. But it was again a wonderful piece of football fiction for those of you who might be inclined
He wrote
to enjoy it.
He wrote another one too, which I don't know if you've ever read.
A sequel to it.
No. He wrote another one called The Franchise.
Oh, okay.
And the franchise gets even more deep in the NFL, not mystique, not conspiracies, but of starting a new team and all these things, and takes, it's so that's another good one. I first read that one at Grandma and Grandpa had a copy of it in Arizona. And so one of the times Mom and I went out there, it was there, and I read it, and I loved it, and so I took it with me. But that's another good one. It obviously very similar, and he's the same writer, so it's
your
very
grandfather
similar,
probably would have enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Did you eat Snickers while you were reading it?
No, not at the time, but at some point I'm sure. But yeah, so anyway,
inside joke, folks. Inside joke.
So anyways, that's another really good one. The Franchise.
Yes. Okay. Next book of the fiction books that I truly enjoyed, and it's by the best-selling author in the world, John Grisham.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Playing for Pizza.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get to the book itself, a little bit, everybody's at some point in their life has had to have read a John Grisham book. Mostly he writes legal thrillers.
Yeah.
He has written some sports books. He's very
Yeah.
interested in sports. Actually, one of his kids played baseball in, I think, at the University of Virginia. He built the baseball stadium, I think, for University of Mississippi. You know, he's very active in sports. He's very active in literature. And he's written a couple of sports themed books.
Yeah.
He wrote about basketball. He
Yeah.
wrote a couple baseball, and a couple football. Playing for
Bleachers.
Pizza.
Bleachers is the other really good
Bleachers
football
is,
book.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But Playing for Pizza is interesting because it married two things that I really enjoy:
Yeah.
football and Italy. It's set in Italy. Grisham also he has a villa in Italy. I
This,
have a VRBO.
yeah. Playing for Pizza is more, it's definitely a football book, but it's more of a Italy book.
Yeah, I think you're
It's
probably
definitely
right. You're
more of
probably right.
his ode to Italy than football.
Yes, but the premise of the story is something that I'm sure most people know nowadays. There's football, professional football. Okay, I got to be careful what I say. American style professional football is becoming very popular in Europe. I mean,
Yes.
that the NFL goes there all the time, but there are a lot of teams now in Europe themselves. They have a league, and they have I see because I follow some of the websites and things that some of the European teams are always looking for coaches, and I
Yeah.
guess they look for players and whatever. And it's a very interesting thing. So they have games. Grisham covers, does write about the games and writes, I think, pretty well, and also about Italy. And it's a very good book. This player is kind of a typical Grisham character. The reason why he's gone to Italy to play football is because he was playing in the NFL and he made some disastrous play in a big game that may have even caused the team to lose the Super Bowl or lose the playoffs. I don't remember what it was.
It was the AFC Championship game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And anyway, so he goes to Europe because that's the only place his agent can find a job for him. And then, he becomes successful again. And then actually, when he gets the opportunity to come back to the United States to play football again, he decides he really doesn't want to do it. But it's a great book. You can go to any used book sale in any place, and there's going to be like 3 or 4 Playing for Pizzas, because Grisham books, at any used book sale, they're all over the place. I have like 3 copies here. At one point, Tony used to give it to some of his players to encourage them to read, but I don't know if he still does that or not. But Playing for Pizza.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the third book, the last book in the fiction category, is one that's called my phone's ringing, I apologize. But the throwback, you know what? I can't remember the last word. Wait, I wrote it down. What is it, Tony? You've got it. The
I
throwback.
can't remember. I gotta look. Hold on. I don't remember now either, Father. Oh, you emailed it to me, and now I gotta look at my emails. Jeez. This is
I had my fiction books and
all
put
right.
them away
So,
someplace.
well, I will say this before we talk about your last book. I've got 2 to add to the fiction. Well, more than 2. So, one that's very near and dear to my heart on the fiction list is Pigskin Rabbi, which is
I was going to talk about Pigskin
yeah,
Rabbi. I thought it was a little bit too specific.
It is, but it's still I still love it. I don't know if I have a copy of it anymore. The throwback special was the one you're talking about, Dad.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other one,
Well, I have
I'll
a
let
copy
you.
of the Pigskin Rabbi.
You do?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
You talk about the throwback special, and I'll tell
Okay.
you my last book. Yeah.
All right. Well, one of the reasons why I put the throwback special on this list is because I had another book that I was going to do instead, but I decided to put throwback special on because the throwback special actually was an award-winning book.
Hmm.
I believe it won a National Book Award as a work of fiction. The other reason why I wanted it to be on here is because there were at least 2 times this past NFL season where the throwback special was used in a game. Now,
Yeah.
the throwback special, again, I'm preaching to the choir here. The throwback special is the play where the quarterback hands the ball off to the running back, who runs to one side of the field. The quarterback runs to the other side of the field, and they throw the quarterback the ball. And they used it in the Lions game this year.
Hmm.
Jason Goff caught a touchdown pass, I think, and the quarterback from the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, I think also may have caught one or came close. I don't know. But
Yeah.
regardless, the premise of this book is that this is kind of, I think, funny. Every year, a bunch of guys, friends, all get together to reenact the throwback special that was first used by Joe Theismann and the Washington Redskins against the New York Giants, but it resulted in Theismann having a terrible injury that I think may have ended his career.
No, that
He
wasn't the
got
one.
hurt.
That's not when he got hurt.
That's not when he got hurt?
No.
Okay. But he got hurt, I think, in the play. I don't know. Anyway, and these players, these guys are so nuts about this whole thing that they reenact the play. And the whole book is about them getting together and what they do. And of course, it's one of these books where, you have all these players and all these just regular average people,
Yeah.
and they get and what's going on in their lives and what's happening in the football and how all of this impacts their lives. So it's really uh, okay, as compared to Playing for Pizza and some of the other books that we've mentioned. This is a pretty not, I shouldn't say high, it's a sophisticated book.
Oh,
And
okay.
I think it's very enjoyable, though. And
Yeah.
so I would like to do that one. Now, the one that I didn't put on here that I thought about is another book, and talk about sophisticated.
Yeah.
It's called, this book is called End Zone. I don't
Oh,
know if
Dom DeLeo.
Dom DeLeo, yes. It was Dom DeLeo's second book,
Yeah.
and it is, okay, it's really kind of bizarre.
It's very
It,
bizarre. I've tried to
yes,
read it. It's a hard read. It's not, I shouldn't say it's a hard read. It's just it's a odd read.
odd
It's
read, yes.
yeah.
And what will give you an idea that how odd it is that uh, basically in the book he compares college football to nuclear war.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's enough said.
Yeah.
All right, did you have one more? Oh, you had the
So,
pigskin rabbi,
well,
and
Pixie,
see,
and then another one that can kind of, it's a weird book. Now there's is it fiction? Does it fall into a coaching book? Does it fall into a season? It kind of encompasses all three. The Junction Boys.
oh yeah, I was going to also mention that one.
Yeah.
I didn't know where to put it though,
Right.
and I think and I had others, you know.
It's a great football read. It's obviously it's nonfiction.
Hmm.
But it's more told in recollection of things. It's not obviously someone didn't follow them around, didn't follow Bear Bryant around back in the 40s, but it's still a very interesting read, and it was made into a terrible TV show.
No, it was yeah, terrible TV
Movie,
movie.
yeah, TV
Yes.
movie, but it's a great
Mhm.
a fantastic book nonetheless. So,
Okay. And I will mention another book that the people, again, I can't think of the title right off the top of my head. You know what? I will look it up in just a second when Tony starts to talk. But there is a fantastic book about Bear Bryant that as a piece of American history, I think every coach, I would encourage every coach to read, because it talks about Bear Bryant in the 60s, well, and 70s,
mhm,
in the civil rights era.
mhm,
And Bear Bryant was wanted to start recruiting black players to the University of Alabama. And of course, the university didn't want that.
yeah,
And so Bear Bryant worked out a home and home with John McKay from Southern California. And USC came to Birmingham to play Alabama, and they were an integrated team. And of course, Alabama at that point was still an all-white team. And USC had a player from Birmingham named Sam Cunningham, who scored 4 touchdowns against Alabama when Alabama lost to USC 42-28. I think it was something like that.
Hmm.
And of course, after the game, Bear Bryant said, well, we wanted to have Sam Cunningham come and play for us, but we weren't allowed to do that.
Yeah.
It's a great book. I'm going to look it up while Tony talks here for a second.
Well,
Go ahead,
you know,
Tony.
no, we talked a lot about these books, and obviously for me, this is this love of literature that I've gotten from my father and mother has spawned a an unholy obsession with football books. So those that my wife knows and my father knows, I've got a stupid amount of football books. There's a great website called thriftbooks.com where I buy whatever I can buy, but it's like kind of like my dad talked about at the beginning. Um, we as coaches are we want knowledge. We love finding knowledge. We love finding this information and so anytime that we as coaches can find one little snippet, one line of text from a book, we'll take it and we'll use it. So these are all of the books you talked about are I think kind of a now the throwback special I've never read, but I think all of these books are sort of must-haves for football coaches. At least once read them once because there's going to be some sort of information, some sort of knowledge that you can take from it. But I got to look at that. I haven't read
Yeah.
the other one yet, so
Well, you can always, yeah, one of the great things of, I don't know about how, if coaches, if coaches, how they think about their uh, pep talks, how they think about motivating their players. And, you think about it, what do you want to say? If you read some of these books, you'll find some good lines to use and
oh
some
yeah,
good thoughts to use and some good things to share, you
definitely.
know. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I
Well,
was
now
worried that I
you
wasn't going to be able to talk for an hour.
no, you did fine. Now
But,
you can go bother mother some more. So again, thank you, Father, for
okay.
coming
All
on.
right. Well, can I just say, wait, can I thank the host and tell him what a wonderful experience this was? And
Yes.
if he ever would like me to come on again, I'd be happy to do it
We're
because,
not talking about baseball books though.
okay. Well, we'll think of something. I don't know.
Okay.
We'll find something to come
Well,
up with.
again, if anybody has questions they would like to ask my father, I think he's no longer on Twitter for his own personal
Right.
reasons. But if you would like to send me a message, I can get you his email, or I can ask him myself and get you an answer. But a great list. Thank you, Dad. I appreciate you coming on.
And thank you.
I'm glad you got to say hello to your granddaughter quickly too. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, Dad.
Bye-bye.
Bye.